So look, we all know that every recipe has ingredients, right? But who knew that purpose has ingredients? In my work as a life coach, as an executive, and as a leader, I found that there is value and power in purpose. Purpose has the ability to ground us. When you know who you are, when you know your why, you're able to move through life with more confidence. Purpose has the power and ability to connect us to the right people. You know when you meet someone and your values and your beliefs, they all connect, and you say, I'm never letting that person go. Purpose has the ability and power to help guide our choices in life. You know when you have to make a decision, and it's hard to make that decision? And then all of a sudden, if you align with your purpose, with that decision, then you can make the choice. Purpose also has the ability to help guide us through challenging times. I had a client some years ago. She was a high-level executive, and she was my coaching client. And she had lost her job. She was no longer working on the big campaigns. She didn't have her big superstar team that she had. And some years prior to that, she had lost her parents. So she had lost a sense of herself. And we had the conversations in the coaching sessions to really take a deep dive into the challenges she was having. And one day I asked her, I said, you don't have those things, but do you know your purpose? And she told me no. And it was one of the most saddest things to see, a person go from here to a very low place. Most of us kind of know what that's like. So we started doing work and focusing on her purpose, to rebuild her, but to also ground her in who she is. Eventually got to a better place, and she called me the other day and let me know that she goes back to her ingredients of purpose to understand who she is, because it's something that no one can ever take away from us. So I got a question for the audience. By show of hands, how many of you guys know your purpose? Okay. Hold them high. It's your purpose. Okay, we got a good number of folks here. Second question. How many folks in the room believe that your purpose is meaningful and important in your life? By show of hands. Okay, we got a good audience, good room. So for the folks who may not know your purpose, don't you worry about it. I may have some gems for you. So the value and the power of purpose can take you to higher heights. The theorist and therapist and psychologist, Viktor Frankl, in his work, he talks about purpose. He talks about the fact that purpose makes life more fulfilling, and it also feeds our resilience, which are two things that are quite important in this glorious journey of life. But I'm gonna go back a bit. I'm gonna tell you about my first experience and encounter with this whole idea of purpose. I was in high school. It was the day before graduation, and I went to see my mentor. She was my English teacher, and she was fabulous. Her name was Mary Mundros. And I looked at Ms. Mundros and I thanked her for everything that she had done for me throughout my high school years. And she said to me, she was like a character from Dynasty. She was very Dominique Devereaux-like, very fierce and fabulous, Upper East Side, all the things. And she looked at me and she said in this voice, Aunrée, darling, I'm not worried about you because you know your why. And I looked at her and I said, well, what do you mean? I mean, I'm smart. I understand what the why meant, but I wanted to know more. She said, you know your purpose. And I said, well, can you put those things together so I can understand exactly where you're coming from? And she said, darling, your why, your purpose, you know why you're here, and it will change your life. She walked away after that with her stilettos, click-clacked away. But that was the moment that sparked my interest in really diving into what this whole idea of purpose is. And the fact that Mary Mundros left that with me, I had to figure it out because she said it was something I had, but I didn't know what it was. So across time, over the years, graduate school, working at HBO, working at Paramount, even now at Netflix, I dive into this idea that my team members and my clients need to know their purpose in order to be grounded. So in my research over the years, I'm okay with the definition of things. So I started off with the definition to make sure I could ground myself in what purpose actually meant from a definition purpose. So the Oxford Dictionary defines purpose as the reason for which something is done or it's made. So now I have Mary Mundros, I have my work life, and I'm trying to put the pieces together. This wasn't enough for me. I'm an artist at heart. So a big piece for me is that I have a visual to really understand what something means. So one weekend, my nephew was over, and he was 7 or 8 at the time, and I was working at my desk doing my research on purpose. And he asked me, could he come to the desk and work with me? You know how kids like to imitate us, so I like to give a good persona. So anyway, he came to my desk, and he brought up his papers and crayons, and he was drawing. And you know how kids draw? He drew a house and a car, stick figures of us, and made me really, really tall. And as I'm researching purpose, I understand there are 3 components of purpose. There's purpose in action, and then there's the results, the impact of purpose. So as he's drawing these pictures and I need an image, we're kind of working together, but he doesn't know it. And he drew a tree, and I was intrigued by that tree. And then he drew another tree, and I said, God, is this a sign that I need to use this tree? And I asked him if he would draw me a tree, and he was happy to. And I mean, he was quite the little Picasso. He drew the roots, he drew the branches and the trunk and the leaves. And at that moment, as I looked at this tree, I put together the research and this image, and it was just what I needed. And I created the purpose tree. So the purpose tree, let's go through it. At the top of the tree, we know that a tree has leaves and blooms, if you have a really beautiful tree. That symbolizes the impact of our purpose, right? When you look at the trunk and the branches, that is purpose in action. Quite often, we confuse our purpose with the roles that we play and the things that we do. That's not purpose, guys. Your purpose lives at the root of who you are. That no one can ever take away from you, no matter what happens. Clearly, we saw that with my client. So as I took a deeper dive into this whole idea of purpose and this purpose tree, I took it out to my clients. And they were great. They're like, Aunrée, we get it. We understand and we see the connection and the correlation. That was fabulous. They said, but how do you find your purpose? So I was back to the drawing board. And my nephew wasn't into drawing pictures for me at that time, because this was some years later. So one day, I'm cooking dinner. I'm always doing something. I'm cooking dinner, and I'm looking at this new recipe that I'm going to try, and I see ingredients. Of course, I'm pulling them out, putting them together, but I'm always thinking about the research. And at that time, I was really deep into my research. And I saw ingredients maybe 4 or 5 times, and I said, there it is. Ingredients of purpose. What is that? So I went back to the drawing board, turned the stove off, put the protein away in the vegetables, and decided that that night I would cook up this idea of ingredients of purpose. So as I was doing my work, I looked at the components and the questions that I've asked clients over the years and my team about their purpose. What are those ingredients? I realized there are 5 consistent questions that I ask when searching for purpose and helping clients and team members search for purpose. The 5 components, the ingredients of purpose, are your point of view, your values, your beliefs, your superpowers, and the impact. Let me take you through these ingredients. Your point of view. Your point of view is how you think. How do you think? Are you a critical thinker? Are you a creative thinker? Do you think in black and white? Can you think in the gray? Personally, I think in black, white, and magenta. It's a thing. It's either the truth or it's false, or I create it. The purpose tree, ingredients, it all comes together. The second ingredient of purpose is your beliefs. Our beliefs drives us, so it's very important to think about what your beliefs are. And even when you're assessing decisions that you're making in life, that you go back to that place to understand, are my beliefs driving this experience and choices that I'm making in my life? So the next ingredient are values. Our values is another heavy driver of our life. Dr. Brené Brown, in her book, Dare to Lead, she has a fabulous exercise about values. She gives us a list, and maybe 2 pages of values. Usually when people see a list of values, we check all them off. We want all of them. I'm all of those things. The second prompt that she gives us is one of the most important. She makes us reduce our values down to 1 or 2. The 2 or 1 value that shows up most prominently in our life. So we have to reduce them down to those 2 or that 1. The next ingredient is superpowers. How many people know your superpower by show of hands? Okay, there's a few. So your superpowers is that thing that everyone knows you for. It's how you show up all the time, whether you're reliable, dependable, strong. Very, very important to understand what your superpower is, especially tying it back to your purpose. And the last ingredient, the 5th one, is the impact that you make. What impact are you making? This comes from external factors. So 1, are you the student of the month, employee of the month? Did the president give you the award? Did you get a bonus for sales? That's the impact, which is also important when you're looking at your ingredients of purpose. So now you have all this data. So now what to do with that? You have to look at what commonalities live across these ingredients. And how you do that? With the red thread. Your red thread is that thread of commonality that lives throughout those ingredients, right? And when you look at the red thread and pull out all the qualities that lives within your point of view, your values, your beliefs, your superpowers, and the impact, 1 or 2 things will stick out. And now, that's your purpose. For me, I didn't know my purpose, but as I moved through that experience, I realized that my purpose is empowerment. So let's look at something in an area that we all know. Celebrities and people who are in the public eye. So you have Oprah, Tyler Perry, Anna Wintour, Meryl Streep, Steve Jobs, Reed Hastings. I'm just thinking about those are people that I love clearly, right? So you have all these folks. And the thing is, in those experiences, that we know what they do. We know they're actors. We know they own companies, they're CEOs. And quite often, we confuse what they do with their purpose. But if you go to the root of who these people are, they're innovators. They're storytellers. They move and guide the culture. They are influencing the culture. They inspire people. That's what they do. And you can put them in any role. And if they're living from their purpose, which most of them do, usually their purpose lives within those things that they do. So I never leave a room without a challenge. So get ready for this one. So I challenge all of you guys. I challenge you to find your ingredients of purpose. What is your point of view? What are your beliefs? What are your values? What are your superpowers? What impact are you making? And then look at that red thread and make sure that you can focus on, highlight, and lean in to what your purpose is. One more challenge. I would like you to bask in the value and power of your purpose. Understand that it's important that if you ever get lost and you're trying to find your way back to yourself, that you lean in to your purpose. Trust me, it will never fail you. That's all for today. Thank you.